What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Black Student Success Podcast, where we bring you insight and guidance from successful Black professionals. This is brought to you by Inquire Hire. My name is Selvin Inquire. I'm one of the co-founders, and I appreciate you tuning in with us today. So as a reminder, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, as well as all of your major streaming services. Make sure to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and that's at Inquire Hire. So INQUIREHIGHER. And then also check out our website, inquirehire.com. We've got a wealth of information there on topics such as college preparation, student success, as well as personal finance. And we are in the season of applying to college. So whether you need help with applying to schools or financial aid, or if you are a freshman, sophomore, or junior, and you're still trying to figure out, what type of preparation you want to do for college, feel free to hit us up. We definitely love to help you. We've got an array of services to basically get you on your college journey. So today's guest is in the field of architecture. And so in terms of career-wise, compared to things like business or politics or things like that, we don't hear too much about the career of architecture. But it's something that is all around us, things that we're living in terms of the houses, apartments, and things like that. It's basically all around us. So I've got a professional here who has over 8 years of experience. He lives in the Phoenix area as one of the respected project designers within the area. He's also a member of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. He's actually one of the brothers who is responsible for bringing me into the fold. So I'm super happy to have him on to talk about his story. Ladies and gentlemen, TR Badger. What's going on, TR?
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
I'm good. Just blessed and thankful.
Absolutely. So we always like to start off the show basically giving you the floor of, you telling the people who you are. So who is TR Badger?
Well, TR Badger is just an average male. It's really just trying to, find his way to, not only to be a professional, but to also impact his community, his family, everything he's been affiliated with, and just make an impact just throughout the world.
That's what's up. And I think you do a lot of that through your work, whether people realize it or not. So just to even set the ground or the foundation of this conversation, I want you to talk about the different areas within architecture, because it's not just, what you do in terms of the design portion. There's also the actual building of buildings. But I want you to kind of break down the different stages, if you will, when it comes to like a typical architectural project. So what does that look like from beginning to end?
Before I answer that, I actually do want to kind of give a little small soliloquy into the first question that you asked me.
Yeah.
I was originally born in Chicago, Illinois, and I was raised in Wisconsin, where I went to high school in Madison, did my undergrad in Milwaukee. That's where I first was introduced to architecture, as far as with certain classes and mentors that I was surrounded by that helped cultivate me in developing an interest. I always had a knack for multiple interests in different areas, as far as sports, music, and really other types of things I could get my hands on. Because growing up, my parents really wanted me to be very multifaceted, and to really be well-rounded. And so they really pushed me to really seek that. And to answer your question, as far as what architecture is, for those that don't know, I was blessed to have a strong mentor that really helped me really see beyond just the building component of architecture, that it's more than just developing a building. It's also really just understanding the different dynamics and all the different integral parts that come into developing a building, such as the surrounding community, such as the people that have these dynamic effects amongst its environment. So architecture is more, as I've learned, it's really just integrating all these different subjects into a piece that imitates life. Because I don't know if you ever heard the term or the quote that art imitates life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was definitely had an interest and skill for art, which also further translated into architecture if you break it down and dissect it. Because growing up, I used to love having pen and paper. Whenever I would just go around outside of my home in public, I would always have a pen and paper, and whatever I'd see, I would just draw it. Because I just really had an knack for just sitting there and just visualizing what I'm seeing by the eye and just imitating it and just reflecting what I'm seeing. And so with that, a good teacher of mine noticed that and, really continued to have me push through that and continue to develop that skill in different ways in other certain sectors of art that eventually has cultivated on me to this day. And so as far as with architecture, as I was just saying, it's more than just a building. It's really just seeing the whole picture of a didactic perspective and just creating a whole visualization of life. And so I started to learn that in college. I really started to learning more of the technical components of it and really seeing of what my professor slash mentor was talking about when I look at it in multiple perspectives, because everything's so multifaceted.
Yeah.
Everything's so, just multi-integrated. And so that's what also interested me as far as, wow, architecture could really just bring certain things together. And there's a use for it wherever you go. It's not just the building. It's also within like developing furniture. It's also, within developing like your radio show, there's always some type of infrastructure that you have in order to develop a certain system that you have.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty good breakdown when it comes to the, how multifaceted it is. You mentioned, considering the people, let's just say it's a building, considering the people who will inhabit the building, the people who are around the building, though that's a factor that's, taken into account when it comes to just the big picture. And then you have your side of it where you're actually designing. You talked about how you drew a lot, and it sounds like that has actually played into the work that you do now. Now, when it comes to the designing part, are you talking about the outside of the building? Or are you talking about how the building is being supported? What are those aspects when it comes to that designing portion that you're mostly involved in?
Oh, it's all the above. I'm thinking when in my profession now, let's say if I meet with a client and he's wanting me to develop a multi-use commercial building, I also have to think about as I'm doing my site analysis, because for me, when I'm working on a client with a project, I really try to make a concerted effort, even if they're local, to actually go to him and see exactly where his site is, because I'm visual. Yeah. And so when I'm visual, I need to see all the different components and all the different adjacent surroundings that I'm designing, because you don't want to be developing a particular entity that may also visually look out of place and ill-equipped. Yeah. That's like saying that, you're having your radio show underground and it doesn't make any sense, because you got to be above ground in order to have the frequencies and stuff and internet connection in order to, display and disseminate the message in the show. Absolutely. So I look at all those different impacts and the different components surrounding it. So it's beyond just placing it. That's like, you've heard of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, right? Yeah. That's like developing a small tower in a residential community. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so that's what I've learned about architecture. As far as developing the idea, it has to make sense. As far as how is it going to contrast and also highlight the community that you're developing, because everything that you design, there's going to be community surrounding it, and you want it to actually really be a component of that surrounding.
Okay, so it sounds like there's and it sounds like you're a visual learner, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so you have to basically see the space And, that allows you to, that allows at least one portion of the design aspect of that. And then you also have a problem solving aspect of that where you're, thinking about, not about generally the design itself, but what are the people going to be doing within the building and how that will have an impact on the design itself. I'm thinking about, when folks are building a school and there's the aspect of marketing where they want the actual building to be able to tell a story. If they want their students to feel like the building that they're walking into represents them. So there's that aspect of, again, thinking about, who's going to be in it? What is this building going to be for? And so you kind of put all of that together, when it comes to just kind of sitting down and thinking about that, but also going out and actually seeing that space so that you can create that visual and actually put it on paper for the client.
Perfect. Yeah. That's the best way to really break it down. Is you're developing a particular structure, like you said, that is a reflection of that surrounding area. Like you said, a school. The school has to reflect that environment that you live in, and it can really have that identity as far as, this is a part of our community. This is a big reflection of it. And this is how it could really have that interconnection. Because like you said, every building has a story to tell. Not just from the outside, but also from the inside and the surrounding of it, as far as creating the whole story and creating a whole infrastructure within an environmental setting.
There you go.
So I think about all that because, as I talk with the client, because they may have their ideas, but sometimes I got to think about, okay, there's also parameters and different restrictions within any specific place that you're trying to design, such as zoning, setbacks, the type of use that is required that the city or town has specifically implied to that specific space. So there's all these different parameters and components that you have to think about when you design.
Okay. Yeah. So if I was a client, I can't come to you and say, okay, TR, I want my building to have mirrors all over the building. This is just what I'm visualizing. And let's say that they're in Phoenix where there's a lot of sun. Now that's going to have an impact on reflection and just, dangers to people's eyesight and things like that. So when you take that information, you're thinking, okay, that's cool. But in your mind, you're probably, okay, I've got to scale back. I got to probably take out all these mirrors because of the hazard that is, putting to the people that are around it. But you're the one who kind of takes whatever they're thinking about or whatever vision that they have and being able to still incorporate as many of those pieces of their vision as possible, but also so making it make sense in terms of, again, all those different multifaceted aspects that you mentioned. So, it's definitely a project. It's definitely a project that's not just the actual physical drawing. So I appreciate that you were able to kind of break that down. Now you got into the whole aspect of, being able to see the space and that helps you create and things like that. So that visual learning aspect. Now, what other skills with professionals within architecture, based on your own experiences, maybe your colleagues' experiences, what skills have you really seen these folks have and, that make them successful?
Business skills, because at the end of the day, it's business. And so to piggyback on what you just talked about in regards with mirrors and stuff, I would first ask, number one, can you afford it? Because everybody comes in with a budget. Yeah. And I always ask my client in the beginning as we discuss and consult with, what they're wanting to do. I really try to make a concerted effort to really have a conversation so I can really get a chance to understand the client and their personality through our conversation. Because I can kind of pick up on that based on how they're talking, what their expectation is. And then I sit back and take those notes and think and realize it's like, okay, how realistic is this really going to happen? And what can I do to make sure that their vision comes to life, but within a safe setting? And so I think about all that to piggyback on your point. And I really try to be as relatable as possible so I can really hopefully find medium common ground as far as what the client's wanting to do and what we can do. There's a difference of what the wants versus what you're able to do.
Okay. Okay. And I think that actually kind of brings me to my next point when it comes to the um, just you as a professional and you kind of getting into learning these different aspects. And, I'm thinking about just kind of before and then after you actually got into the field. Now, with you being a Black professional within the field, I'm sure that there are some challenges that you have faced, not only with the learning part, before you actually got into the work, but also afterwards. So can you talk about those challenges that you might have faced as you were, learning about the field, and then, once you actually got your profession or career started, were there any challenges that you faced after that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I could even tell you about the challenges even during the process, which is when I was in college.
Hmm.
Being the one of few minorities, you already feel like you have a chip on your shoulder going in to begin with, anyway. And so, having that in mind, one of my other mentors in high school, I have plenty of male mentors that have been very influential, and I
Hmm.
really, keep them in mind, and they've had a real profound effect on me. And so, I listened to a lot of the quotations that they used to tell me growing up, and then I would see what they alluded to, and I would try to imply that as I would try to execute at least my particular way of trying to get something completed and succeeded the right way. Um, so what I would do, I would always see the challenge before walking in and analyze. It's like, what am I able to do within this challenge that I know that I can at least complete first? And then when I get to a hard stuff, at least let me try to have the flexibility and time for me to work within.
Hmm.
That way, the mistakes that I make, I'll know what mistakes I made. And as long as I have the time to rectify it and complete it to make it better, at least that's a little bit of leverage and advantage for me because I know I'm not going to complete everything 100%. There's going to be times where I fail
Hmm.
at a particular assignment. But, a wise man always told me, man, whenever, without success, you don't really learn success until you fail. And
Hmm.
so really I take that into mind. And to really further accelerate at least what I'm learning. The biggest challenges that I would also experience is, as I was saying, as a minority, you're in a majority for Caucasian people that already feel like they have an upper hand on you.
Hmm.
And so you may experience this, but even in any field, not just architecture, but any field in general where you are the main minority, you got to work twice as hard to feel like you receive half as much.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so with that mentality in my head, I already have that. And so I try to go above and beyond no matter what, meaning that to me, that's not an option. I have to really make sure that I show that, I do belong here because preparation um, shows your determination. And also, it also impacts your separation. And so, with that in mind, I really try to make a concerted effort to not only um, learn specifically within the assignment or wherever. This is not even just within academic, but this is
Mhm.
also just socially because you also got to interact with people.
Right.
And the biggest thing that I was very grateful in grad school was that I had a more diverse group of a cohort
Hmm.
that all came from different walks of life and different perseverances that they had. And so, as I was saying earlier about being relatable, I would really make a concerted effort to really try to find some type of relatability with all of my cohort to
Hmm.
let them know that we may look different, act different, but if there's one thing in common that could open up a whole different floodgates to create a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was really thankful to have when I was in grad school at Arizona. At Milwaukee, it was a bigger class, and so it was hard for me to do. And because at that time I didn't even think about it because I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Then when I got to the graduate level, it was a smaller class of only about 20 people, and we're all in the same classes every day together.
Yeah.
So we're around each other all day, every day. And so that really made a big impact and turning point for me to really develop relationships because, to your point, in business, you've got to develop relationships. That's why I really make a concerted effort to really talk with my clients and really just talk with them as much as possible.
Okay. And now for somebody who maybe doesn't have that that opportunity to be around a diverse group of people, but they know that they have to work on developing those relationships with people that might be different from them. What would be your advice to those people in terms of building that relationship building skill? What would you give to them to be able to hone into that before they actually step into that career?
Well, to answer that question, I would say don't always think of your contemporaries as competitors.
Okay.
Think of them as complementary. Because I really didn't agree with the whole point where one of my professors in school said that, you're competing with your colleagues. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you know what? I didn't really want to think like that because I didn't want to feel like I'm trying to be in this race, feeling like I have to do something better than you.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I can't, because there were certain things when they presented as far as their particular projects that I actually learned from them. Yeah. And I incorporated it within mine. And so I saw it as complimentary. And then, after the presentation, I would talk to them and say, you know what, I really like how you diagrammed this particular concept and the way that you presented it. I really liked it. And so I kind of asked them, it's like, how did you do that? Because you never really know of a person that may help you instead of you thinking that they're going to hurt you. Mm-hmm. I really kind of, just went on faith and just thought like, if they don't want to, help me or feel like they're giving away their secrets, you know what, at least I tried and asked.
Right.
But, I would have found their secret regardless, because as we say, I'm a visual learner. You're kind of showing me a little bit of your footprint anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to just get more context as far as how you develop of what you deliver.
Yeah. And I like that, instead of looking at them as competition, you look at them as complementary. So in the way that you basically learn the information and you, like you said, took some of those pieces to make your own skill set, your own development better, I think it actually goes back down to that whole relationship building, because if somebody sees you as this cutthroat person who's just trying to one up everybody because you have this, this strict mindset of everybody's a competitor, and not even to say that I think even just having a balance of that is probably healthy. But, if someone's just straight like, nope, I'm doing this all for myself, I am not trying to get any help from anybody. I'm just trying to one up and do all this stuff. That actually affects your relationships with those people that you're learning with your cohort and everything. So
not only that, it also affects your growth, because nobody succeeds alone. And so that's the one thing that I kind of had a reality check with that, because I had that mindset as far as like, you know what, I'm on my own. I'm in survival mode. Don't trust nobody. Mm-hmm. I had a really real awakening and humbleness with that throughout my development. And that's why I had mentors and older peers to tutor me, and for me to be under the tutelage, for them to know it's like, you can't survive everything. You can't be successful on your own. You got to have certain people in your life that will help you and help cultivate you. And so I really try to take that to my advantage, because at the end of the day, we're all peers. It's like none of us get paid for this. We're paying this school for them to teach us.
Yeah.
And so why not really bounce off one another in order to help us stronger? Because I'm a full believer in community through the strong bond. And it's like, if you're successful, then I'm successful. Mm-hmm. I'm all about sharing success. I don't want to have it all to myself. Because as I've gotten older, I really feel like I really see more joy and blessings from watching others succeed. And I'm just thankful that I actually had a piece, or I was able to contribute to that.
Yeah.
And so absolutely. I really, for me sometimes, now I understand competition in business from a business perspective. I understand, because, we're all trying to, have a career, and it involves money. It takes money to make money. Mm-hmm. But from a social and dynamic aspect, to me, it's beyond just the money, man. It's relationships that could lead you to other opportunities.
Very true.
And so I think about it beyond the monetary aspect, man. I think about it from a relational aspect, because even with clients, I really try to make a concerted effort to just to make sure that we can talk about things outside of the business and just keep it pretty cordial and moderate.
There you go. No, I think that's very well put. Having the mindset of seeing that big picture beyond the money, and really focusing or having it focus on the people, because we're all human. We're all trying to succeed. Like you said, I feel the same way. I like seeing people succeed, and especially if I had a piece of that gives me some type of fulfillment, and then, later down the line, that person might be able to return the favor back. So, it always comes full circle. There's, good karma in there. So you just want to take advantage of that. So, one thing that you mentioned a couple times, having mentors. And so I can personally say that I didn't have a lot of mentors in terms of the things that I wanted to be better at. So for development, that made it a little bit harder. It made it a little bit more difficult to know what to improve. It made it easier to be content with a certain level of skill that I had with anything. So, what can somebody who might be in that same type of position, where they don't have mentors, or they have to actively look for mentors, to be able to, progress in what they want to do and get that expertise and feedback, how would you advise somebody to seek that type of mentorship?
That's a good question. I'm only thinking as far as us in the African American community, because I know when you're in certain fields, being the minority, a little bit of intimidation to begin with, for you to feel like, okay, do I really belong here? There's not many people that look like me. But I asked these two questions. Are you going to evade it? Evade it, or are you going to embrace it? And so what I mean by embracing is that, you know what, you are here for a reason. Whether if you believe it or you don't, embrace that and really try to show what you can bring to the table that's different from others. But to answer your question, as far as seeking mentors, I would first say that really within the field or professors that you're surrounded by within your specific subject, really have a conversation with them off the record. And really try to, ask questions and really figure out, like, how did you get to how was your development to the point of where you are right now? And if so, if you do, let's say you have like a small business or a contact, what's a good number that I can actually, call you or contact you off the record one-on-one? Because what really will show a professional that you're taking it serious is how you initiate yourself. And so you got to put yourself out there and really understand that, whatever result you get is what you get. At least they can say that you tried. And so that will really go a long way if you really make that extra effort. But to figure out as far as how to actually find the right mentors, is number one, developing the relationship.
Yeah.
And really get to know them on a semi-personal level as far as their dynamic. How do they react? How do they respond? How do they talk to you? How do you talk to them? And how they answer your questions. And so it's those little components that will really kind of give you clues. Because I really take into account on the body language. That's why for me it's important for me to have some type of dynamic and some type of conversation within my clients as far as to know exactly, okay, this is how they're thinking based on what they're giving me. And now I can actually figure out or really understand a little better of what they're expecting and what they think and how they respond. Because really what determines what shows your personality is your reaction and response. So I take that into account, and then it gives me clues as far as like, okay, is this a person that I can actually really follow and believe that they can actually help me if they really have an interest in me. I was telling this to my wife in her field, is that when you have an older peer or mentor that really cares about your development, that's the best thing in the world, because they show that beyond, as we were talking about monetary assets, they really care about your development as a person. And so when you have that, it motivates you to be better. Not just for them, but for yourself. Because not only that you believe in yourself, but they believe in you. And that really makes a difference as far as developing your motivation and just your inner self to feel like, you do have a purpose.
Yeah. And I think you you pointed out that people care, when it comes to you reaching out to them for that type of advice. And I would say, and then maybe you can even say this personally because you've been in the area where you've actually taught students. But when, somebody reaches out to you, it's kind of flattering. And, as a professional, and, for the fact that someone who's kind of maybe just be in the class, but they've taken that extra step and saying, hey, I'm looking to kind of, develop this, what has your experience been like? And then that actually makes them more motivated to help you. So especially for all my introverts out there who might not want to make that step to approach, that it is something that just about any professional would love to see, even if it isn't somebody that's like a professor or a teacher, especially for those who are in high school. If it's just maybe somebody who's at your church or somebody that you work with who you can see presents himself in a certain way that you're like, yo, I want to be like that person. I want to see how they kind of develop that is really flattering for those folks. So, don't be afraid to reach out, especially when it comes to that mentorship, because everybody, both parties do benefit from that relationship. So, I appreciate you, getting into that and, your advice for those folks. So
can I add one thing? You brought up a good point as far as
introverts.
I was also an introvert too, so I can honestly relate to that. Well, I was a little nervous on talking to higher professional because I didn't want to look bad, or I felt like I was gonna say or stumble when I was talking. And so as we keep bringing up mentors, my mentor said, okay, if you're afraid to talk to them, show them through your actions. As far as like show them as far as a certain skill that will catch their eye and they come to you.
Yeah.
Because there's certain ways where you don't have to go to it. Let the it come to you. And then it will also create a certain comfort, because it's like fishing. You're fishing, trying to find that fish that you want to catch. Mm-hmm. Then let the fish come to you and figure out what you catch it. Then you see what you can get. And then you can, you develop that comfort, because at the end of the day, what really helps bring a person's skill and motivation in life is comfort. You got to be comfortable. And so, for certain introverts like myself, that was a little nervous or a little intimidated to really kind of talk to certain professionals or those older peers that have strong personalities that that, okay, their personality is too strong. There's always certain ways, or I don't want to say loopholes, but different strategies to really try to find and communicate.
There you go. No, I like how you wrapped that up. Great analogy when it comes to the fishing and everything. Now, when it comes to, getting back into the field. Now, let's say that there's, somebody in high school who might have the skill of drawing, or, they realize that they have this problem solving thing that involves, people and the buildings that they're living in. Let's say that there's somebody who's good at engineering and they're looking into that whole civil engineering field. But specifically with architecture, what advice would you give to somebody who is considering the field in terms of doing their research, when it comes to the field itself, research for looking for a school and, the level of education that they're getting, based off of, what you've experienced so far? Because I know that you've gotten your master's degree within architecture. What advice would you give to somebody who's kind of starting at the beginning with that?
As far as just having an interest?
Yeah, just interest, and then how they can follow up and look into, and what types of things that they can look into.
Honestly, I've also would ask the young student, I said, what are your other interests? Because, in most cases, we all have more than one interest that we want to pursue. And so I would ask them that question, like, well, what else do you want to also, pursue outside of architecture? Because I know in most cases, not people grow up or are born and say, I'm going to be an architect. That's pretty rare if you look at it from realistically. Now, in most cases, such as people from our community, what's the one main entity that most of us would like to be? Either a musician or professional athlete. Just because that's ingrained within our culture as far as within the Black community, because, that's what really defines us a little bit. And so it's architecture being kind of like a rare entity that most people don't think about just because of the low numbers of us in the field, there's always some extra steps. As far as to answer your question, when I've had students come and ask me as far as how do I get into the field, I would first say, well, also think about all other interests that you want to pursue. Don't just limit yourself. Always have leverage and always diversify yourself. Because I've often said architecture is more than just the building. It's just really understanding all the different components of life. We're surrounded by architecture whether you know it or not. Inside a school, inside your home, inside a hospital, inside a bank, inside a tower, anywhere. You're surrounded by the whether if you know it or not, it's inevitable. And so I had a student when I was teaching high school students back in 2011 to 2013, and let them know it's like, as architects, they have to follow a certain system. It's also applicable if you wanted to be a nurse, if you wanted to be a banker, if you wanted to be a teacher. There's a one common denominator of a term that everybody in their specific fields all have to follow, and that's infrastructure. And so within that, you can also say that you're an architect within as a nurse, because you got to have a certain infrastructure in the system in order for you to achieve successfully. And so I really talk about, as we were talking about earlier, as far as being multifaceted, I embrace that particular term and say that, if architecture is really an interest, what is it that you have other interests that you should integrate together? And if you believe that if you want to, let's say, for example, a guy wants to be a construction worker, well, it's relative to architecture just because you're actually building and using certain tectonic to develop whatever structure that you're developing. And so if you're really thinking about architecture and you as a construction worker, what do you have to have in order to be sure that you're building your structure correctly? You got to have a blueprint, which is developed by architects. And so let's take it to another deeper level. If you really want to understand and figure out how the architect drew up those plans that you're building, that's another gateway for you to, seek that interest as far as like, I want to learn how to actually develop what I'm actually building with my hands. Instead of building it with my hands brick by brick, they're doing it by pencil, paper to paper. And so I really try to just use different types of examples that's not too exact architecture centric,
right?
To really pull different components that are not as relevant, but then see of how they integrate with one another. And then really see that, don't limit yourself. Always diversify, and just think that if architecture is really what you want to do, think about the other components that could really kind of be an infill as far as if architecture specific what you want to do as far as developing the plans of it, and seeing as far as how you develop other plans with a certain integral level, then you can really see all perspectives.
There you go. Very well put. Very well put. So now in the midst of all of this, you have, developed your career, up to a certain stature, and you're continuing to do so. You're, doing your own freelance work and things like that, which I'm sure keeps you pretty busy, with managing everything else outside of work. So what kinds of things do you do to take care of yourself, to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position to be able to do the work as well as you can, being able to take care of your family as well as you can? What types of self-care do you engage in?
The main self-care is organization.
Okay.
You have to really organize. Well, I'm an organizer by nature, whether if I was doing work or not. But to have just a certain system, it's hard for me to operate when things are out of sync and out of place, because I'm very structured. I got to have a certain system that I'm able to follow, know what to expect, and know how to handle it when it comes. And also expect the unexpected too. So it's just really trying to be as versatile as possible. But to also further answer your question, as far as how I self-care, I just really just number one, just wake up and just focus on just today as well as think about tomorrow. Because as I was saying earlier, your preparation determines your separation. And so I always want to be sure that I'm always 5 steps ahead of whatever I'm about to walk into next. That way I don't, either become ill prepared or be in a position where I'm not able to handle what I got to handle. This is not just work. This is even with the family. This is even with, with my wife, to be sure that I'm on point as far as our dynamic and communication, and just really just keeping a balance. That's really the key term. It's just really having a happy balance. I don't really try to overdo myself to a position that I can't handle, but to just analyze like how much time is this going to require, how much am I able to give, and what I'm willing to give. And that way I can really have the leverage and flexibility to really kind of maneuver as best as I can.
There you go. So it's like a combination of organization, balance, as you mentioned, and then that self-awareness so that you know what your limits are, because burnout is real. You always hear the no days off, slogan kind of thrown out here and there. You got to take a day off or two, because you might just shut down, whether it's your mind or your body. One of those is going to tell you that, hey, I need to take a break. So I think that combination is definitely beneficial, for you, and then just, everybody who interacts with you. So thank you for breaking that down. Now, before we close out, I wanted to give you, something a little bit fun in terms of, a question, that's related to the work that you have. So as a project designer, you are, responsible for those different aspects of the building, everything outside the building, things like that. Now let's take something, let's take a structure that's already made, but fictional. Let's say, if you were part of a project, for any type of fictional building. So examples, like Cinderella's castle, the city of Wakanda, even going as, silly as SpongeBob's Pineapple House. What project would you want to be involved in, when it comes to any of those kind of fictional buildings, and why?
Yeah, you asked that question in your email, and I actually thought about it. I really don't know. I thought about the Wakanda thing, and that's one particular fictional project I would love to be a part of. But I want to take it to another level. Have you ever seen the Peyton Manning commercials, nationwide commercials of Peytonville?
Yeah.
That'd be actually a project that I really would love to be a part of, because as we were talking about earlier, you're developing a community. So I think about the infrastructure, not just as far as the building component, but just the interaction and life of that specific space. As far as like, there's a bank here, there's a restaurant there, there is a business center here, there's a sports arena there. Because as I was talking earlier in the introduction, I was a big sports fan. And one of the favorite type of designs I would love to develop was, basketball courts. And one of my portfolios, I really got excited on a project that I did back in college where I developed a community center. Because growing up, I spent a lot of time in community centers. And, as I was growing up and learning the architectural skills, I would always revert back to my time in community centers, and really seeing as far as just the interpersonal dynamic amongst the adults, the children, and the surrounding environment. And so that really resonated with me. And I would think about, developing a game room, a rec room, classrooms, just a whole integrated environment that was important to me, because I think beyond just the building, I think about the impact as far as the, interpersonal dynamics of people. And as far as just like, for example, what's the word I'm looking for? This kind of just development, the overall operation of a specific place. And so I use the example of Peytonville, because you're designing a whole aspect of life. And so that's the biggest thing that I always was interested in, is developing a specific area of life. Even you think about the politics perspective, as far as different laws, different zoning, different types of codes, and that building is just a component of that.
There you go. Hey, well, hopefully, probably in the next 10 years, you're going to be creating a whole Peytonville yourself. So that'll be
maybe
cool. Yeah. So, TR, man, I appreciate your time. This has been pretty dope. You've gotten a lot of good gems, information that you brought to the people. So I appreciate your time. Before we do wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to either promote? Did you want to, share how people can reach out to you if they had any other specific architectural questions? We'll give you the floor.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have my brand called TRB Design Productions. I've been developing this brand for the last few years, and this is just kind of, as you were mentioning, kind of my independent business where I'm able to have just that one-on-one contact with clients and really get that deep involvement with development. Usually, I just develop more preliminary schematic designs.
Mhm.
So my piece that I really appreciate the opportunity is to just have a contribution to a particular project. And then if they want to hand it off to another contractor to get it developed, I can at least be thankful the fact that, I played a role in it. Because this is one of the biggest things I really, really appreciate as far as with not just with clients, but with students. It's just the small stuff that counts. And so as I was talking beyond just the monetary reward, I also think about the reviews, also think about, just the reception that I'm able to receive from others. And so I don't take that for granted at all. And as you were to piggyback on what you were asking me earlier, in regard with what if a student that's interested in architecture, come to me and ask me certain questions, I won't take that for granted. I will try to give them as much knowledge and advice as possible, but I always want them to also be themselves, because as I was teaching my students back when I was in grad school teaching at the high school level, I always said that, you need to show somebody that you're going to run into people that may not believe in you, and it's up to you to show them through your work and through your action that you are somebody where you don't have to talk about it. You can just be about it.
There you go. All right, man. Well, thank you for your time with, sharing your story and your perspective of the field. We'll definitely make sure to have your production company information within the description of this podcast. I just want to take the time to thank everybody for listening. If you want to hit us up, give us feedback, you want to hear about a different professional or field, feel free to hit us up on our website. Again, that's inquirehire.com. You can hit us up on social media, or you can even email us at inquirehire@gmail.com. So until the next time, take care of yourself.
Oh, Seven, one last thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, you asked me where they can contact me at. My website is www.trb-designpro.com. So it's www.trb, all lowercase, -designpro.com.
There you go. I appreciate you catching that one. So yeah, we'll make sure we have all that information in there. Again, thank you, TR. Thanks everybody for listening. And until next time, peace to you and have a good day.